All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming to another NEARC community event. My name is Katie Grillo and I'm the GIS Web Technology Specialist at the City of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I'm also on the NEARC Board of Directors. So I was your board president for the last 2 years, and now I am immediate past president. So my role with the NEARC board, one of my roles is to help organize these community events. We've got a really exciting topic today. We're going to be talking about ArcGIS Hub, and just a few things for housekeeping. This is a meeting format, which means you all do have the ability to turn on your cameras. You do have the ability to unmute yourselves. Please don't do that until the very end. We're going to save questions for the end. And during that time is where I encourage you, if you're open to it, to turn on your camera and ask your questions and that kind of stuff. But for now, this is being recorded. I will share this video as well as some of the event resources with all of you afterwards. So that includes some of the details about the presentation we'll see today, some links, and this recording itself. So before we dive into our topic, just a high-level overview of NEARC. We are the Northeast ArcGIS Users Group, and we are a nonprofit, all volunteer-led organization here in New England plus New York. And we host 2 major conferences every year. So there's a 1-day event in the spring and a 3-day conference every fall. So this year, the fall conference is going to be in New Haven, Connecticut, and that will be from October 15th through the 18th. Hopefully, a lot of you are already registered and excited for that event. It should be a really good time. We've got a lot of fun networking and social events happening, as well as a ton of user presentations and workshops and demos and panel discussions and all kinds of great stuff. So stay tuned for more information about that. I'll put a link in the chat in a little bit. If you're also an aggressive planner, you can save the date for our spring conference, which is May 21st of 2024, and we will be at Salem State University for that one. So in addition to these 2 major conferences, NEARC also hosts these community events, and these are an opportunity for us to come together. Usually it's virtual. We do host some in-person events from time to time, but it's just an opportunity for us to connect as a community between our major conferences. And so the community events are designed to kind of be a deep dive into a specific topic. So today we will be talking about ArcGIS Hub, and we are doing a little bit of a Esri user community collaboration. So today's event is going to be kind of split into 3 parts. We're going to start with our friends from Esri. Will give us an overview of Hub, and then we have some user presentations for lightning talks. And then we'll hand it back over to Esri to do more of a sort of demo behind the scenes sort of look. So we've got a lot to cover. We will save our questions for the end. You are welcome to put stuff into the chat throughout this meeting, but we do have some time set aside at the very end for questions and discussion. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Tom to kick us off.
All right. Hopefully you can all hear me.
Yep, sounds good. And I can see your screen.
Excellent. You can see the big screen. I got lots of screens here. So, okay. So I'm here with Mark Scott. Both of us are from the Boston Regional Office of Esri. And you may know us from previous engagements or seeing us at NEARC or whatever, but we've both been around for a while. So feel free to reach out with any questions after this session if you're so inclined. First initial, last name at esri.com is the typical email address. Katie mentioned deep dive. I'm gonna counter that with it's not super deep because we don't have a ton of time, but hopefully enough to get you to whet your appetite here around ArcGIS Hub. And as Katie mentioned, feel free to put questions in the chat. Mark's monitoring the chat. We may or may not be able to answer them all, but we can take them away and we can address them at the end if we don't get to them in the middle here. Okay, let's get started. Basically, cooperate if my thing would cooperate. Next slide, please. There we go. We think of ArcGIS Hub as a cloud-based engagement platform, right? And it helps us basically connect with some community. That community could be citizens, it could be specific groups of people, it could be internal, et cetera. And you can see sort of all these different pieces around the circle being able to sort of connect into this this idea of a hub. And we often see this pattern of some sort of initiative or focus area being put out, but external stakeholders aren't really engaged, and the vision comes all from within and is just sort of thrown at a community, and community members are not brought in, and that really doesn't engender trust from the community. And Hub is one of the ideas of Hub is to help eliminate that. So to try to inform the community, to engage stakeholders, whether they be citizens or colleagues or whatever. And if it makes sense, to bring them in to help create a vision, to get that buy-in and to build that trust. So those are some of the goals we have when we set out to building Hub. There are lots of patterns of use. I'm sure with the lightning talks, we'll see some of them, and we're going to show you a few as well. One is simply to share data and content, like an open data site. And I'll mention this, I have a slide on this later, but everybody who has an ArcGIS Online subscription has access to Hub and has access to publish an open data site, among other things within that Hub environment. So you can, I don't know how much we'll get into this during the demo, but you can customize how it looks and feels and what categories you have. And you can see some, a simple example here from Johns Creek with a bunch of icons around different types of data, and also some dashboards and apps that they've highlighted. So this is I won't say a simple use case, but a common use case that Hub enables, this idea of sharing data and content. Another idea is to really involve more people. So to reach out to the community and get input from that community. So here you see an example around Transportation Planning Authority looking for to really get out information to a group of people, engage those people, maybe bring in surveys, et cetera, to get input from those people. So that's another use. Here we have something to really get people involved and inspire action. And this is Escondido, and they've used Hub to really help facilitate volunteerism within the city. So there's all these different volunteer activities, and through Hub, it brings them all together. It shows when they are and what they are, and allows you to register for things through surveys, et cetera. So that's another sort of public engagement, public perception kind of thing. And another is just to, really focus on specific community topics, right? So it lets you spin up these sort of pages around an initiative, bring in feedback, communicate changes, explore visions, et cetera, around a specific area. So those are some of the common use cases we see. We're going to see, obviously, some users who've done some work with Hub. I'm going to show you some sites, and then after the users, we'll come back and we'll look at how we build a Hub site and various things around that. With ArcGIS Hub Basic, which you all have access to, you get to create a Hub site that allows you to communicate effectively and to get feedback from users. Okay, and you see there's sort of two broad categories. There's the people who are building the Hub site, who are interacting, making it, and then there are people who are consuming it and maybe providing feedback, et cetera. But we could break that up into a little finer grain roles, if you will. And you can see those roles here, and Hub Premium, which is an add-on to Hub, really enables this. So you have staff who are building it. You may have trusted collaborators. These are maybe people from outside your organization who you want to be part of the building of the initiative, the Hub site, of the effort. You got people who are actively engaged. You've got people who are actively interested, and then you've got sort of the general public comes and goes, whatever. And we can think of that as within the, we'll talk more about Hub Premium, but the idea of you've got a team of people who are working on this hub site or hub initiative, right? So you've got these three groups to the left that are could be on your team, right? They're part of the team to build the hub site. And then you've got people who are actively interested. They want to follow it. They want to be kept up to date, et cetera. And then you've got the general public. So that bigger purple, the first four things in that purple rectangle are people who might have an identity. They have a login, and that login lets them interact with the hub site in different ways. And that's where we get into a discussion around a community organization, which I think I have a slide that talks about that when we talk about Hub Premium. But these different roles and the ability to be on a team and to have an identity that you can connect to an initiative really come with Hub Premium. So that brings us to the idea of licenses and capabilities. I think I mentioned this. You all have access to Hub. Your ArcGIS Online subscription comes with Hub Basic, and then, of course, you can license Hub Premium, if that makes sense. And the basic hub really lets us do a couple things. Open data we talked about, but also this idea of hub sites around a topic. And within that hub site, you can do things like add dashboards and apps and maps and story maps, and you can put surveys in there and really collect information. And they don't preclude, I should say, a hub site can include open data as well. They're distinct as this slide makes it seem. A open data site is a hub site, so think of that as like you could be just focused on open data, or you could expand it beyond open data to include all those things I mentioned. And I'll also mention that many of our solutions, if you go to solutions.arcgis.com, many of those solutions actually provide a basic hub site for you as part of the solution. They lay it down. You don't have to use it if you don't want, but they lay it down for you, and then you can do whatever you want with it, build it, change it, use it, delete it. Okay, that's basic. And again, we'll see how people are using this. We'll get into a demo of building and using it, so you'll see some of that. And then we add this idea of premium, and premium really adds these engagement tools. And it gives us the ability to have events and a calendar, and to have projects, which we'll talk about later, and discussions, and to have this thing called a community organization, which is like a sister organization that's attached to your primary ArcGIS Online organization. And if you think about it, if you have people from outside your org who you want to be part of an initiative, whether they just are meant to follow it, like, oh, I want to be notified when things change, or they're going to be more involved in building a hub site, you don't really want to use your main ArcGIS Online organization for that, right? You don't necessarily want outsiders as part of your main org, right? It's not necessarily a best practice. They may have access to stuff that you don't want them to have access to, things like that. So this is another thing that the community organization, as I mentioned, exposes, is it lets those community members not only be followers to an initiative, but also be part of the design team and the edit team and things like that. So that's another role of that community. That's like what the community org is about. And that community org is really just an ArcGIS Online org that's sort of attached. So you can limit what people can do in there. You can let them build surveys. You can do other things, but the main piece of that is to help them, allow them to be attached or involved in your hub efforts. I think we've seen this. I'll just get to the end of this. You can see the difference here between Hub Basic and Hub Premium. There is a similar thing to Hub as part of ArcGIS Enterprise called Enterprise Sites. And it has a lot of the same capabilities as Basic, but it's part of Enterprise. Typically, these things are used more internally than externally, but they certainly could be exposed externally. Okay. I think this isn't, this is what I mentioned, this community organization. And it's sort of a connected organization, and it comes with credits and users, etc. And we typically like to manage any users in that community org. You can just go directly to that community org and log in because it's just another ArcGIS Online org, but better maybe to manage those community members within the initiatives that they're a part of, because it lets you do things like message all the people who are following an initiative, or build teams around a particular initiative, or give different people access to different parts of an initiative, different pages and things like that we'll see inside an initiative. That's not to say you can't go right to the organization and do things there, but we would rather you think about it from a hub perspective and not an ArcGIS Online org perspective. A couple last slides here around other things that Premium gives you. I think I mentioned this, the idea of events, the ability to put them on a calendar, to expose them via a calendar, to let people sign up for them, to be able to message those people who are signed up for them, etc. That's part of the Premium, Hub Premium. It's not as robust as like Eventbrite. It's not going to send out automatically emails 2 days before an event to tell you you've signed up, etc. But it gives you a lot of those tools to like know who's coming and be able to email them, etc. The ability to, I mentioned this, to message people as well. And then there's this idea, a couple other things. There's the idea of creating teams and assigning community members to teams so they can help build your hub site. And also this idea of projects, which are, think of them as like, if you have an initiative around like making your city better or something like that, civic pride, whatever, you may have some projects within that, like tree planting or park cleaning or whatever. This idea of projects it's basically a quick way to set up a page around a specific sort of sub-initiative, if you will, project within an initiative. And it's templated. I'll show it when we get into the demo. So you can sort of quickly set something up and make it work. And again, I'll show that later in the demo. And I think those are all my slides. I do want to show just a couple websites before we get into the user presentations. So these are all public, and you can find them. If you search for ArcGIS Hub Gallery in Google, you'll come to a list of things like this. This is the city of Washington, D.C., and this is their demographic data hub. And you can see they've done things like put some statistics on it. They've got a business analyst. This is infographic here that you can interact with. And then they've got a map. And actually, this looks like a story map or something. Oh, actually, that's a different page. Sorry, let me come back. Let's go back down. They've got this thing that you can interact with, different layers. They've got that data search, which I talked about, right? So this is more than just a open data site. And then they've got access to some other links, story maps, infographics, maps, etc., and other resources. They've also got, you can have multiple pages in your hub site, so you can see all these different pages. So if I went to racial equity, actually it looks like a data search, but here's a data analysis page. Here's another one on profiles, etc. You can have as many pages as you want within a hub site. You can notice over here there's a button to follow. If I were to choose this, I would be asked to, if I haven't already logged in, to log in. If I don't have a login, I can create one in the community org if I'm allowed to do that, and that will attach me to this initiative and let me get information sent to me, etc. So that's one example, an open data example. Here's a community science example. This is monarch butterflies, kind of interesting. So you can see there's some, I think, some good stuff in the resources, right? It doesn't all have to be spatial either. Like you don't see a lot of maps and things like that in this particular one, although I think there's a map coming in here. On and on and on. You can put dashboards in here and experiences, etc. That's another one. Here's one from EOEA in Massachusetts, resilient. I don't know what's going on with this map there, but basically resilient maps and data center, right? So this has got a lot of information about resiliency in terms of climate change and other things like that. And you can see here's a dashboard and some statistics and more data searching and a gallery. And thought there are multiple pages up here as well. Just a couple more and I'll finish up here. Here's that Escondido site where they solicit volunteers besides giving you information about what's going on. Here's a volunteer event, things like if you have one coming up that you want, you can see they have this idea of volunteer impact with a dashboard coming or a story map coming in, videos in there, etc. Here's the event calendar I mentioned. Don't know if there are any upcoming events. Yes, there are, but you can see like here's a coastal cleanup day and you can choose to attend and a trash pickup, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these will fire off a survey. Like if I do this, it will fire off a survey where I register for that survey. So they're not using necessarily the attending event so much within Hub, but they are using the events to show you on a calendar, and then they use Survey 123 to populate that. And then, as I mentioned, some of these Hub sites are a result of implementing one of the ArcGIS solutions, solutions.arcgis.com. Like this is the equitable property value Hub site they give you. Obviously, you put your own data in here, but you can see it talks about assessment. Here's a little calculator here. Like if my home is worth $500,000 and they've got a little calculator here to say, well, this is your estimated taxes. And then they pretty much, it links out to different apps that are part of that solution, looking for comps, looking at the tax parcels, am I in a floodplain, et cetera, and also the data and then community events again as well. And if you don't have a premium, obviously you won't have events, et cetera. But just another example. So I'm going to stop there. And hopefully you have just a sense of like what Hub is, how you might use it. Again, we're going to come back after user presentations and look at how we might actually fire off a Hub site and do something with it. And we'll talk a little more about community members as well. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing there and turn it over to Katie, back to Katie for the user presentations.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tom. So next up, we're going to show some examples from our user community of how folks have, or what sort of hub sites people have created. So to kick us off, I'm going to pass it over to, where's my list? Sorry. I'm going to pass it over to Jason Chupiga. And Jason is going to show us an example from the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries. So Jason, over to you.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you all for showing up today. I'm going to share my screen here, and basically I've created a open data hub like Tom was talking about, which you can do with the basic. So we all know about going from paper to digital to trying to get our data out to all our people in the community. So this is our website at the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. And so this is our data access page. So you can see there's some antiquated things here about asking for CDs and Google Earth and things like that. And then once we've kind of gone into ArcGIS Online and using that, we now have our main geo library where we can access all these services and download shapefiles or Google Earth or whatever. And it's kind of boring to me. You can search by, this is all of our data from IF&W. And so when we got the ability to have Hub, it was a nice way to be able to present all that data to our users in a nice manner that's not boring, and you can share your services, dashboards, forms, spotlight certain stories that you're doing or whatever. And it makes it really kind of glossy and nice for everybody to look at. So this is our Hub site that's for our data. Just has a little description here. I was able to highlight a certain story here that shows our story map on the bald eagle recovery in Maine. So you can click on that. You can make it look really nice, have photos and things like that in there. And then, like Tom was showing earlier, we have all these different categories of our data. Most of this is based on regulations and laws and things like that, but we have our boundaries and fisheries and things like that. And then one of the things I like about this is everything you do in ArcGIS Online, you can brand everything so people know that it's your data. So you can see all the thumbnails that I've created for all of our services have our logo on it, and they all look the same. They all have good descriptions, and it's nice to look at. And then one of the things that we have at the department, we have a couple different programs that we use. We have Beginning with Habitat, which is a non-regulatory program. And then we have Environmental Review, which is for development projects and stuff. And a lot of times the community has been using Beginning with Habitat for regulatory stuff. And so this was my way to try and split those apart and kind of demonstrate to them, if you're trying to do something non-regulatory, go here. If you're trying to do something regulatory, go here. And then we have the different viewers that we've created for each one of those programs. Then there's a bunch of dashboards we have that pull up data that we've been working on for different projects, between the bird atlas, our harvest data from every hunting season is in a dashboard for the public, and the media. The media uses this quite a bit for reporting during hunting season. And then our vernal pool data from all those submittals. And then we were able to add a bunch of our surveys in here for community involvement. These are all open public surveys for people to collect data for us. And it's been really taken on by the public, and we've gotten quite a bit of good information from them by all these surveys in here. Then we have our citizen science portal, which is a separate site, but you can link to another site in here and put some information on it to be able to get people to engage somewhere else. And then this is another thing that's through ArcGIS Online that kind of tracks our conservation actions from our wildlife action plan. And then the footer, just all our information and a few links here. It's very simple, easy to use, easy to put together. And I think it's much prettier than our geo library plain text kind of thing. So that's all we've done so far. But I mean, we have other surveys that are using the Hub Premium, where we have people with accounts from our like animal damage control people that fill out our wildlife conflict forms. So we might incorporate that into here or create another Hub initiative. And then we're talking about our shooting community, holding trainings and events at our shooting ranges and things like that. Maybe starting another Hub site for that too. So those are kind of premium things, but we haven't really dug into that yet. But that's kind of next on our horizon.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. That is an incredible collection of information all in one spot. Looks great.
Thanks.
So next up, we have Erica Poison, who is going to show us the hub site for a employee portal. So Erica, over to you.
Great, thanks, Katie. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Is everyone able to see that?
Yep, looks great.
Perfect. So I'm Erica Poison. I work for Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, Division of Water Supply Protection. And unlike Jason, we are using Hub more for internal communication. This is not really a public-facing hub site that we advertise. So this was built to replace a very not user-friendly internal kind of staff portal that had forms and other really useful information, but it was in a poorly formatted website that our staff had a really hard time searching through to get the information they needed. And the result was pretty much nobody used it. So right before COVID, we actually started using Hub to build out an employee portal that we could share with staff. And the goal was this would be something that staff could have as their homepage when they log on. And it would have basically all they would need for jumping off points, for getting to their timesheet and submitting an IT ticket, or finding important forms. So here is our hub site. This is actually public because we have a mix of staff. About 2/3 have ArcGIS Online accounts, but we still have about 1/3 of staff that do not. So we wanted to make something that all staff could access regardless of accounts. The thought was, everything that is in this public page that we see right now is, fine for anybody to see if they happen to stumble upon this, which I think would probably be rare. So anyways, we have a nice header here with different pages that people can get information from. But on the homepage, front and center, we have some just important information that our staff generally care about. This is updated every few days. And beneath that little embedded dashboard, we have a bunch of links to important forms and resources that staff want to access often. So for instance, somebody could come here and submit a work order request, or they could check the status of an existing work order, submit a time off request, reserve a pool vehicle, reserve a boat, reserve a room, get to their email or Teams or OneDrive very easily. We also have a little app gallery down here of some of our public maps and apps that staff either generally use quite a lot, like these in the top row, or just kind of nice reference material, maybe for new staff who are just coming on board. We have a nice page where people can get forms or important information that they might need. So these are all links to SharePoint or OneDrive. Staff can download and access the forms they need very easily. Now, if I was to log in, I would get some different information. So we really liked the sense of giving access to content on the hub site based on group membership. So we use groups pretty heavily within our organization to share content, as I'm sure everybody here does. But this changes what staff get on their homepage. So, this looks the same so far, but depending on your group membership, a whole other slew of apps will show up. Now, because I'm an administrator, everything shows up for me. I have access to all of it. But if a user logged in and they only had access to a handful of these, only the relevant app cards would show up. And then it's a nice jumping off point for staff to access what they need. You'll also notice that we have some new tabs up here. So if I go to our NR projects, this is a group of staff who have a lot of content in ArcGIS Online, and they were having a really hard time keeping track of it or finding the links or remembering, how to access it through a group. So we were able to use a page in our hub site to kind of bring it all together and break it out into different sections. So we have a group of applications. We have a group of field maps that they use. You know, for our land monitoring, we have a whole section for that. This has been a really successful way to, you know, have staff be able to get the information they need really quickly. And we use Hub for a variety of internal purposes kind of like this. And it's been very successful for us so far.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. I love that idea of using all the different groups. Maybe when we get to the question and answer, I'm curious to hear more about that. It sounds like a very clever way to sort of organize a lot of information. All right, so next up, we have, for our last lightning talk, we have Brendan Robertson, who's going to talk about water resources and the asset manager for the City of Portland, Maine. So Brendan, over to you.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. Yeah, let me get ready to share my screen. Okay, are you folks seeing it?
Yep, looks great.
Okay. So a little backstory to our hub site. You know, a few years ago, our division began working on an integrated plan here in the city of Portland. And we developed that plan really to address our multiple regulatory reporting requirements and try to create a more unified program you know, for our regulatory reporting. So we created this site really to provide stakeholders and staff and members of the community with updates on the progress of the integrated plan, and also to kind of promote that community and stakeholder engagement. And just, again, continue with the backstory, you know, we had, through that IP process, we had 10 objectives that were developed. And those objectives are the targets that we use to measure our progress. So our IP was developed as a long-term approach, you know, really to improving water quality and meeting our regulatory requirements, while also meeting these 10 objectives. So what you see, it looks fairly simple. You know, we have a few pages here. You know, we just provide a summary of the integrated plan. We have our IP projects and water quality and system performance and community livability. And all this really is to help users and viewers come in and see what kind of progress we're making towards the IP. So most of this is just embedded dashboards. They've been incredibly useful for what we're doing. So down here we have you know, our 10 objectives and how many of our projects to date are contributing to each of those objectives. So in this little dashboard, it can be seen in another site or another page that we have. But really, we're trying to make people aware of these 10 objectives that we created and how the projects that we're working on, whether it's a sewer separation project or storage project in the city, you know, how is it meeting those objectives? And then coming down, you know, again, another little dashboard just showing the number of citywide programs, the number of initiated IP projects, and things like how many lane miles are we swept last year, and the total amount of sediment removed in the last 5 years from the city during our street sweeping programs and catch basin cleaning. So, you know, we can come through. One thing that we've all seemed to really enjoy is this interactive map that we've created. So staff members, stakeholders, it's not public just yet. There's still some things that we are working on to get it out there. But at least staff members can come in and filter through the projects, either by selecting the project itself here in the map, or by coming through the IP objective selector. So they can filter out the projects based on the objectives and which ones they meet or don't meet. So, you know, they're broken down between how many are in progress and how many are complete. But it's just a neat little way for people to come in and see some of these projects that we have going on. like the Bat Cove South Storage Facility. It's a CSO storage and treatment project. And it tells you which of our IP objectives, we've met. So it's a helpful little tool for people to come in, just get a sense of what we're doing. Same with the water quality. We are responsible for reporting, our number of combined sewer overflow events throughout the year. So we've created these graphs using dashboards to come in and show the total CSR discharge volume by year, going back to, I think, 97, 98, along with the average rainfall. Our catchment area map, how many acres of CSO catchment area we've removed since 2015, how much of our annual wet weather volume is treated, at our East End wastewater treatment facility. So really what we wanted to do, again, is just come in and start to explain to the public, this is why you're seeing our street sweepers out, well, at least throughout spring and summer here in Maine. But also looking at the total amount of debris that's been removed during our catch basin cleaning and street sweeping. We want to make the public aware of the efforts that we're making, to improve the water quality throughout the city, even by showing just the locations of our stormwater treatment. The structural controls that we have throughout the city. So all this is information really that we have to report, whether it's in our MS4 report or our CSO report, or our CMOM report. But, members of the community can come in and, they could zoom in a particular area of Portland if they wanted to. And I know this map looks very jumbled right now, but, we break down the total number of storm inlets, all of our infrastructure really, that we have throughout the city. And for the regulators, we can provide information on the linear footage of sewer pipe that we've inspected throughout the year, how much we've cleaned and renewed. So again, all this is information that goes into these reports, but doesn't necessarily just get pushed out for the public to view, which is why we created this hub site. So that way, even though it's not public yet, it'll be out there for members of the community to see, why we're making the efforts that we are to improve water quality throughout the city. And all of that is just housed essentially here in our hub site. So it's been a great resource for us and we've enjoyed putting it together. So we're looking forward to building on it some more. So, but yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate, so I thank you to all of our lightning speakers for showing the sort of just some examples of the wide range of what we can do with this tool. I will be sending a follow-up email after this session that will include some contact details for all of these folks. So Brendan mentioned that hub site's not public just yet. Erica mentioned that there's this technically public, but not trying to share widely. But that all of our speakers have said that if you have more questions or want to learn more about what they've done, then they are open for you to reach out to them. So but we will save some question time for the end today. But now I want to pass it back over to Tom and Mark. So now that we've seen some examples, Tom and Mark, can you show us a little more sort of behind the scenes and what we can do with Hub?
Yeah, sure. Be happy to. Let me share my screen here. Okay. I picked the right one, hopefully. Okay, so I want to talk about how you get started here. The first thing to note is I'm in my ArcGIS Online org, and if I just have Hub Basic, I won't see this. I'm in the settings, the organization settings. I'm the administrator. I won't have this Hub tab, but if I have Hub Premium, I will have this Hub tab. But everyone should have this Open Data tab, and you can enable open data, really. You don't need to, I don't think you need to do this, just use Hub in other ways, but you may have turned that on already. Anyway, to do anything here interesting in Hub, you can see it. You go to hub.arcgis.com and you basically log in. And this is my overview page. And now I have Hub Premium. It doesn't look a ton different. If you don't, this is what it looks like if you just have Hub Basic. You've got sites, and that's kind of it. On the Premium page, you see it adds this community piece, and it also adds some things, adds this ability to add new events, which, as I mentioned, is a Premium thing. For whatever reason, when we talk about Hub Basic, we talk about Hub Sites. And when we talk about Hub Premium, we talk about Hub Initiatives. Ultimately, they come out as the sort of the same thing, although obviously with Premium, you get more tools. So apologies from Esri, or from me for Esri unofficially, for trying to confuse you or continuing to confuse you with names and such. But the evolution was enterprise sites, Hub sites are sort of equivalent, and then Premium gives you added functionality, and so we stepped it up to initiatives. Regardless, it's sort of the same idea. I can, in either case, whether I'm Hub Premium or Basic, I can say I want to create a new initiative, and you can give it a name, whatever, and you can create sort of a blank one or a starter one, or you can look at the templates that we have for you as a starting point. And I'm going to hit Browse Templates, and I'll go to Esri, not mine. And you see there's 50 choices here. As I mentioned, many of these are sites or initiatives that come as part of a solution. And you can spin them up without that solution in place, but they're here and they're known. And some of them are not. So you see a lot of these are owned by ArcGIS Solutions. Here's a blank one. It's like totally blank, owned by ArcGIS Hub. You can see like the coronavirus, it's a solution one. Here's one that was put out before that solution was in place, Hub, et cetera. So there's a mix, and you can use any of them as a starting point. I actually spun one up called something about increasing community pride. So we're going to play with that one. And if I go back here, and I really don't want to create a new one, but if I go to manage, here's the one I spun up. Okay, it's mine. I'm an administrator in my org, so I could look at ones that are owned by other people, but I'm interested in this one. And that will take me to the home page of this template. And you can see, it's got some stuff in it already, all of which you can do whatever you want with, right? You can delete it, you can reorder it, you can change the imagery behind things, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go over here. Many of these things, most of these things, and I'll try to point out where Premium kicks in, are common to both of these things. So for instance, settings, there's a name, you can have a summary, you can have an icon, you can put tracking on. So if you use Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics or Site Improve, or you're in the EU and or want to put up a little message that says you have to agree to cookies, blah, 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 you can do that. Someone asked about in the chat about domain settings. You can, yes, you can rebrand your crazy long Esri assigned URL to your own, portland.gov or whatever it is, as long as you get your network people to do the right DNS stuff. That's about all I'm going to say about that, because I don't really do that, or not involved in that. But yes, totally doable. Happens all the time. You can see other things here as well. You can set a theme, and that has to do with fonts and colors. There's a header, but the most interesting part of this is the layout, and all the things that you can insert into this page just by dragging and dropping. So think of the way this works as you have a row across the page, and then you put things in the row, and then you can have more rows going down the page. So the row can have, you see here, I'm working on this row. It can have a background image, it can have colors and transparency, et cetera. And then in this row, I've got this banner text, and I've got this other This is all part of that. And then I've also a couple different text elements that I can put in. If we scroll a minute, if we click in this area, you see this is actually a text thing, but let me find something I want to find here. Let me drag some stuff onto here. For instance, I could grab a map. I want to put a map in my page, and I want to put it, let's say, in this row next to these 3 cards that are here. So I'm going to just grab that map and drag and just drop it to the left. And now I have a map, and then I would select that map, whatever it is. Oop, I did not mean to click the map, but click the checkbox. And now this map is embedded, whatever it is, right? And I can interact with it. I can't interact with it here in this preview mode, but I can do it when I save and look at it. Sorry, in this design mode, I can't interact, but I can when I interact with it. Okay, so that's, you can see some things here that I can choose. If this is a complex map or a very small map or whatever, I might want to disable it on a mobile device because it just won't show up well, that kind of thing. So there's all kinds of things you can do there. You could drag a survey here. So let's find a place for a survey. I'll put that survey here. Do I want to create a survey or do I want to select an existing one? So I can find surveys of my own here. I use this one fairly often. And it's going to put it in there, and I can actually say I don't want you to have a link to it, but I want to embed it. All right, and now that survey is embedded in this page, and people can interact with it within, while they're looking at the page, right? So that's kind of cool as well. So there's lots of things there. I'm not going to go through every one. You want to put some external content in, you use an iframe where you put a URL of things you want to embed. That could be anything. There's I think there's a video here, YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook videos, for instance, social media, Facebook and X/Twitter. They haven't changed that name in the help. And then there are some things that are focused for premium. The ability to follow is a premium thing. We mentioned that, right? You have to have a way to attach a person to this. That's using a login, and that's a part of premium. You don't have to use a community login to follow something. You can use an existing ArcGIS Online login, but the whole following thing is part of premium. The event pieces are all part of premium. There's a calendar in here somewhere that I'm sure I can't find in the moment. Unless it's this upcoming events, that's a calendar. The idea of teams is also a thing that's part of premium, etc. So you can see all the different things that you can put in. If we scroll down far enough, oh no, this does not have a data section. There's this particular initiative doesn't have data, but I can add, how we saw in some of the user presentations, like categories of data, transportation, environment, whatever, natural or parcels, whatever, that kind of stuff. You can add those categories in as well here. So you can really build this out however you want. You can build multiple pages if you want. Let me go back to this. Back here, right? I have only one. I have an extra page. It says 0 if you just have a root page, but I added a second page called page 2, and it just lays down like another sort of working template for you to design a page where you can add. You see that layout thing again, where I can add all these different things, which is nice. One of the things that's part of, I mentioned this newish thing called projects. So this, let me go back to my home, right? This is community pride. And within this, I might have a couple different focus areas. And I've chosen in this example to use the idea of projects. And you can see a couple projects here, park cleaning and tree planting. So let's take a look at one of those. I would create a new one by saying new project. And this is a template, and I can enter things into the template. I can't really change the template. So we'll see what that means and what it shows up as. So I've got this project within my Civic Pride initiative around park cleaning. I've got a purpose, I've got a description and a picture, a location or multiple locations on a map, and a thumbnail, the status of this project. And then if I want, I can put a little timeline in place. I've got 3 steps: do something else, and finish. That's exciting. And I can add featured content if I want as well. And let me save that. And that's about all. I mean, this is sort of a communication tool around that effort. So let's go back to our site. I'm going to save our changes here, and then I'm going to look at the preview of this, because what I did was I added that project in using layout and using a gallery card or gallery widget to show my 2 projects here. So let's preview this site and just, oops, I'm going to save again, doesn't really matter. We'll go into preview mode, and this is what they show. I mean, I haven't made a lot of changes to this, obviously, but here are my 2 projects. And if I click on one of them, let's go to park cleaning. Got that map. I've got my purpose and my description and my icon, and I've got this little timeline, right? And I've got any featured content, and that's it. That's all I can. That's sort of, but it's a very easy and quick way to sort of highlight some small piece or a piece of your overall initiative without having to do a lot of, custom design work, if you will. Okay, back to editing. We could go back to page 2, and just to show you this a little more, or we go to a layout, and if I want, I can insert a row, let's say between these 2 rows, right? I've got this empty row, and I can do things like add an image to the background, a background image, excuse me, or give it a background color and background text color. I can put my own CSS in here as well. If I'm a web person, I know CSS, I can design, add that sort of functionality as well. Let's go back from the row, and we can put things in our row. I mentioned like a map if we want. We could put a gallery. So let's just put a gallery in here. And then it's like, well, what do you want to put in your gallery? And you can see I can pick from all these different things. I could put the projects, which is something we've already seen. I could put maps. I could put pages, like links to the pages. There's page 2, story maps, etc. And these all pull from groups that are part of the hub site. And I'll come back to that in a minute, but I can, let me just mention that I can have it sort of find all the apps or find all the story maps or whatever, or I can manually choose things. I can go to my org and be like, oh yeah, I want this and I want this, and let's just add those manually, right? So I can do that manually, but I can also do it dynamically. And as I mentioned, that dynamic piece comes from this idea of what groups are part of this initiative. And when I talk about groups, we're talking about ArcGIS Online groups. Hopefully you're all familiar with the idea of groups, the ability for users to contribute and consume things in a group to help keep things organized. So I can add different groups to my my initiative or my site here, and then that obviously will show up in things like this dynamic content. Let's talk a little events. We'll talk about events briefly. Let's save this first. Events. So again, a premium feature, but I can create an event. I'm not going to add an image here, but I'll be like clean up Main Street Park, right? Clean, show up, clean it up, etc., etc. Make that longer, obviously. It's attached to this initiative. I can have a button that allows you to sort of sign up for that initiative, or I can just make it sort of informative. I'm the organizer. Can add a sponsor. Where is it? No address to. When is it? It's this date. It's from blah, blah, blah. It's et cetera, et cetera. And I'll save that. and then I can add calendars, and I can add featured events as or widgets that I have available to me. So that's events. I could add a picture, obviously. There's also this idea of teams. So you've got this core team. There's a core team who have sort of pretty much full access to things, but then I can add other supporting teams. So if you think about the idea of maybe external people only having limited ability to edit limited things, like, okay, NGO who's helping me, this is your page, and I'm going to give you access to edit this page, but I'm not going to give you access to edit the sort of main page of this initiative. And you
Tom, your audio just cut for me.
am I back?
Nope. Yep, that's back. But if you can repeat that last sentence.
Yeah, so I don't know what was missed, but you can create new teams and you can add new teams. And those I've just gone into this butterfly team, and I'm a member only because I'm the owner, but I can add other members. And this list that you see here comes from my org, but I didn't do this. All right, let me edit team profile, and let me say that other people, that partnered collaboration, they can also be added to this team. So let's go back here. And now you see I have this option for people in my community, right? So not only can I add people who are in my ArcGIS Online org, like my colleagues, but I can add other community members, people who maybe have signed in from, create an account from outside my org, and I don't want to give them an account in my main ArcGIS Online org. So I can add these people as members of this team. And then once they're members, I can go to some part of my initiative, like a page, and say, these members have access to edit this page. Okay, and when we do create a new team, let me go back to teams for a minute. And when I say new team, you can see sometimes you want to give them edit access, and sometimes that team just needs view access. So I won't create a new team. Right, community members. Well, groups manager I mentioned earlier, this is true of basic as well, the ability to add groups so that the groups are known within this organization. So you get a group called whatever your initiative is, content, and then you can go and from your organization, you can see all these, you can add so that the content of those groups will be known more easily to the initiative. Has basically one follower, and that's me. So there's not a lot to do here, but I can invite people to follow. I can message the followers, right? If I want, so I can send a message to either a group of them. I only have one, but I can message that person, or I can message everyone, like, hey, check out the new content on our initiative around about this new event is coming on September 30th. Come help clean the park or whatever it is. So I have those tools as well, and there is a dashboard as well, which gives you a sense of access. This is gonna be really empty. These 67 page views are like all me. So not so interesting, but you get some basic information about this page. And I think I mentioned earlier, if we go back, I showed that there were some options for other analytics, like Google Analytics and Adobe Analytics and another one as well. So this is very, very coarse, but you can obviously with Google get, more detailed who and what and where and all that kind of, not who, but what and where and all that stuff kind of thing. And if I, just to show you this, if my organization, just so you know, is called Government GIS, but its sister org, which I chose the name of, is called Government GIS Hub, but you get to pick that name. And if I log in here, you know what, let me do this just so I don't confuse anything. we'll just do it in another private browsing window here. If I sign in, just to show you this, right? This is the sister org, the community org. And here are those members that we saw. There's 11 of them, right? We saw that list before when we were adding them people to teams, but you can see it's a full org. It's got, you know, you can set up home pages and you can see the credits and all kinds of other things like that. I don't think it gives you access to location sharing. That's one of the things that's not part of it, but you can own org. Typically we're not going to administer it here, but we'll use the tools that exist here to do that administration piece. Let's go back to the site home. You can work on a draft version here, and then when you're happy with it, you can publish it. You basically can have sort of two, think of it this way, is you can have two versions of this site going. You can have a published version that the public sees, and then you can have this draft version that you're working on. And anytime you hit this publish button, you can think of two working versions of this. And you can also see that this is a page by page thing, but I can decide who gets to see this. So right now, only people sort of that are part of the team can see it, but I can change that to be my whole organization. I can add groups of people that are part of my organization, or I can make something public. Right, so those are the choices, and that's page by page. So I think as Erica showed, she had some pages that were maybe organization only, meaning you need to be logged in before you see them. And so she had some links across the top in her header, linking to the other pages. And as a public user, you might see 3 of them that were public, but as a logged in user, you might see 5 of them because those last 2 pages were shared only with the organization. I'm not sure that's exactly what Erica did, but that's just an example of how you might do that. And I mentioned in the chat, and Erica mentioned it as well, that if you put things in this site, whether it's an app or a map or other things like that, that are not shared publicly, when a public user comes and the page is obviously public, that part of it will just not show up for them. It won't like put an error in there and say, you do not have privileges to see that. That particular card or if it's a list of things will just not include things that the person does not have access to. So I think that's nice because it lets you have like a public-private site in one site. The public gets to see it, what they get to see, and the internal people get to see not only what the public sees, but also some added things that are only available to them because they're logged in. I think I'm gonna sort of stop there. I don't know, Mark, anything that I caught your ear that I may have not covered?
I don't think so. That's pretty comprehensive.
I know it was a speed, these are sort of speed reading things here, but hopefully gives you enough to actually have, be willing to jump in. I mean, we always say this, like, there's no harm in jumping in and trying these things, right? You don't have to make things public if you're just playing internally.
Right.
So hopefully we get over the scare of doing anything for folks. And with that, I don't know if there are questions in the chat or just anyone wants to come off mic and ask any questions. We'll do our best to answer that. I think also we can open it up to questions about the lightning talks. So we're all still here and feel free to have at us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. And this is great. We actually have a bunch of time for questions, or maybe we can even end a little bit early and give folks back another 5 minutes of their life. But I did have a question based off of what Erica was showing and Tom, also what you mentioned. Can you explain a little bit more the difference between these teams and groups? And Erica, I'm curious because you mentioned groups for access. So Erica, are you using groups for access or teams?
I'm using groups. So like, for example, the project pages, like for the natural resources team, that page is shared with a group. And then once you log in and you authenticate, if you're a member of that group, the page shows up.
Can I just say that the word teams is a good word for Hub, but when you create a team, what it's doing in the background is creating a group. And then you add your members to the team, it is adding members to the ArcGIS Online group. So if you choose to create a team and then you go to your ArcGIS Online org, you will see a group called whatever you called your team. And when you add members to that team, you will see them appear in that group, right? So two ways of getting at the same thing, really, doing the same thing.
Okay, thank you. That's a good thing to know about. And feel free, folks, if you do have questions, you can raise your hand, can unmute yourself or put things in the chat. I know there
question. Sorry, go ahead. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was just going to say there was a little bit of chat happening about the URLs themselves. And Tom, I noticed when you were showing the one that you were creating, the URL, does that default to the title of the actual hub? Okay, so whatever you use.
It's sort of a mashup. It's the title with dashes instead of spaces, and then your org name. So increase community pride, government GIS, all with dashes, and then .hub.arcgis.com. Right. That's the structure of the default thing. Of course, as I mentioned, you can, if your network team is cooperative and you create DNS entries and such, you can change it to, be a much simpler URL that actually is your organization's URL, like, myinitiative.whatever.gov or whatever you want there.
But is there a way, I'm thinking about, for those of you that are familiar with ArcGIS story maps, and when you're working with the navigation, it kind of gives you like default headers in the navigation, but you have an option to like click on it and change just the way that navigation title is viewed. So can you just change that display URL name without working with the systems team and actually setting up a custom domain?
I'm not sure I quite know what you mean.
I'm just wondering if you have the ability to sort of edit and customize that URL without. Okay.
No,
fair enough.
You do not.
Katie, one thing you can do though, like if you make additional pages, when you create a page, it will come in with like some default page name that's usually pretty junky, but you can go in and you can customize it. So it would be like your hub URL / whatever custom text you put instead of like the default junk.
Yeah, and I had an extra page in my initiative called page 2. That was my choice. I called it page 2. Wasn't being very creative, but it could have been, Park 1 or, some more descriptive bit for a particular effort or page focus. Someone asked about groups. Groups in general, I think, are pretty well documented in the ArcGIS Online help. The idea of groups, if you're not familiar with them, is the ability to both organize things to make it easy to find for people, but also to potentially limit access. So typically anyone can create a group in ArcGIS Online and call it whatever they want if they have permissions to do so. And they can choose how that group is found and who can join the group and what people can do in that group, whether they can contribute or whatever. And then members of that group, let me give you an example. I create a group called Project 1, and I share a map and some layers and a story map or whatever into that group. And then I invite Mark to that group, or I add Mark to that group. Well, now Mark, I don't share it with anyone else. That means Mark and I are the only people who can see those items in that group. It also makes them easy to find by going to the group called Project One. There's a couple items. I allow Mark to put things in that group as well. He creates a web map and such, shares it with the group. I can see it. Then I add Katie to that group and she can see it. You can also make some groups what we called shared update groups or shared edit groups. And that allows other people to say, edit my web map and save it without having to like make a copy of it. Right. So these are the two main uses for groups: permissions and just organization.
Along those lines as well, Tom, you had mentioned the ability to sort of add data. Does that data have to be included in a group in order for you to sort of add it as a section?
Well, I don't think so. The data, you can, I think, find data like just by searching for it. Adding it to a group makes it show up automatically in the sort of, I want to add a gallery card or whatever it is to my organization. It will go to the groups that are part of your initiative and look for stuff. So usually in a lot of those widgets, there's a like, I think you saw me do dynamic where it just said, oh, find all the story maps. And it just was like, boom, found them. Those come from the groups that are part of the that are sort of registered with the initiative. But I went to manual mode and I can just find stuff. So you don't have to have it in a group, but putting it in a group helps you keep things sort of in one place or find things more easily. I will say, just as a side note on groups, things can be in more than one group, right? So they could be in a group that's in Project One, but also in Project Two, and also shared with the organization or shared with public, et cetera. So you're not limited to sharing things only in one group.
I've never created a hub site before, so I have lots of questions. I can just keep going, but folks, feel free to put things in the chat. You can also raise your hand or mute yourself. But Tom, I was also wondering, when you were showing that sort of section that you added where you just set the green background color and the white text, I'm wondering, do hub sites have sort of standard themes, sort of like what we have in Story Map? And if so, are those themes all accessible in terms of like color combinations and visual access?
When you say accessible, do you mean?
I mean, like they've been checked for readability of the background color with the text color on top of it to make sure that they're accessible.
No, you can make some pretty bad choices, I'm sure, and it won't stop you. I'm just looking at the theme thing. So that question is no, you can make it black on black if you want, and good luck reading that. Yeah, so that's definitely not checked. And also, I think I'm just looking like, I don't know where it pulls its base theme from. So there may be a place to set. Let me just check one thing here while we're doing this. Sign in defaults, no. Oh wait, information, no. All right, I was looking to see whether there's a place to set like a default theme, but I can't find that easily. So no, one thing this is a total side note. I was talking to someone, a cartographer at Esri, about something I was doing, and she just looked at it and goes, well, that's not compliant, with whatever accessibility standards. I'm like, it was a gradient map, like a leaf peeper map, and it went from green to red, sort of like green is not yet started leaf prettiness and red is over, or brown or whatever. And she just said, well, that's not compliant. I'm like, I don't know what, and she showed me, if you like, in Pro, there's this tool to let you like see colorblind as a colorblind person would see it. It's relatively new. And she showed me that it went like, for a red, green colorblind person, whatever it's called, it went from like this dark yellow to bright yellow and then started going back to dark yellow. Anyway, I mean, I only mention that because there's a lot to making things compliant beyond being stupid about putting green text and red text to get green background and red text or whatever. Anyway,
Yeah, I just put a link in the chat for
yes.
a really great resource. It's called whocanuse.com, and that resource shows you can put your background color and your text color, and then it will show you all these different spectrums of grades and contrast ratios and that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
I
there's
highly
also
recommend checking that out, folks, if
there's
you're worried
also
or have questions.
a tool, I won't find it quickly, from Oracle, that takes your whole screen and you pick like one of 3 different color blindness things, and it just totally changes the colors, and you can look at it and go like, whoa, that's totally bad, you know, or whatever. I forget what it's called. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, we can chat. I don't want to go
Yeah,
too far
that's
down this
fine.
rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
right,
I
right,
saw
right.
Jason, you had your hand up. Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, so when I built this hub site, there is a way to set a theme at the beginning. So then your color branding color scheme is throughout the whole hub site. So I did that in the beginning based on our branding stuff. But I also had our I&E department look at it for ADA compliance kind of stuff with these contrasts. And I'll just put this one in the chat too. I think it's similar to what you put in there, but it's the same kind of thing that you can put in a couple colors and see if the contrast is good enough for compliance. But I didn't know about that thing in Pro, Tom. I'm gonna have to check that out. That's pretty
Yeah, I
neat.
think it's on the map ribbon. Can't remember the top of my head, but let's see. Yeah. Someone asked, it's called Color Oracle. If you Google Color Oracle, it involves a Java runtime library though, so just be aware of that. Someone asked about if you have basic and you upgrade to Premium Hub, you have to start over. And the answer is you do not. Your sites will just get upgraded to Premium, and I think they get downgraded. I don't quite know how downgrading works, but I assume there'll be like little exclamation marks around things that aren't valid anymore. But if you upgrade, your sites will just have more tools enabled.
All right, well, I want to be mindful of the time and thank you again to all of our speakers, Tom, and then also Mark from Esri behind the scenes, helping with the chat, that kind of stuff. Thank you to Jason, Erica, and Brendan for your user perspectives. I find it really helpful to be able to not just hear about the tool, but then see how some of us in the community are actually using this. So thank you all for volunteering. We don't have any other community events on the calendar right now, but that's mostly just because we're focused on the fall conference. So I put a link in the chat. I'll put them back in there again right now to our 2 upcoming conferences. The fall conference registration is open. The schedule has been posted, so hopefully we'll see a lot of you there. And please stay tuned on our website and also our LinkedIn for more upcoming community events. And if you'd like to get involved, if you have an idea for a community event, if you want to do lightning talks, please reach out to me. Would love your help and collaboration with getting these things organized and figuring out different future topics. As I said, this is recorded. I will send out this recording as well as a bunch of different resources and links to all of you via email after this session. And if you need anything else, then all the presenters' contact details will be on that email. So please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you all so much for coming.